New videos every day.
Have you ever read an article stating that there was a new gay gene discovered? Is homosexuality genetic? Is there a gay gene? I want to know what you think, so post a comment. Let me know if you think that homosexuality is genetic or not, and then continue to watch the show. Now, the reason why I ask is because today we're going to be talking about whether or not homosexuality is genetic. And what about mental illnesses? Are they genetic? The question of whether or not homosexuality is genetic has been discussed for over 100 years. The theory of homosexuality being genetic was originated even before DNA was discovered. Long before DNA was discovered, people would observe the similar characteristics between offspring and their parents. For instance, you have two black dogs, they mate, you get a black dog. You have two white dogs, they mate, you get a white dog. Now, when scientists or people would study the similar characteristics between parents and their offspring, we call that heredity. You have genetic studies, which is actually looking at the DNA, and you have heredity studies, which is looking at the similar characteristics between offsprings. Man has studied heredity for thousands of years. Ever since they figured out how to breed livestock. The application of this is actually called selective breeding. That's why we have so many different types of dogs. Now, the study of DNA has really only seriously been studied for about 30 years. The big question in genetics is what characteristics are purely genetic and what characteristics are influenced by the environment. In psychology, this is called the nature versus nurture argument. The best way for psychologists to study this question is to study identical twins. Then if a trait is purely genetic and one twin has this characteristic, the other twin should have the characteristic as well. So with identical twins, you'll see they have the same color eyes, same shaped nose, same color hair. That's purely genetic. Now, say they turn 20 or 30 and one of them's been eating McDonald's all of their life and the other one goes vegetarian. Are they going to be the same weight? Now, that's not purely genetic. Now, there are diseases that are genetic, whereas if one twin has it, the other twin's always going to have it. Like sickle cell anemia. One twin has it, the other twin's always going to have it. Or Huntington's disease. One twin has it, the other twin's always going to have it. Or Down syndrome. One twin has it, the other twin's always going to have it. Now, if we're talking about personality traits and one twin has a personality trait, the other twin isn't always going to have the same personality trait. Now, what about homosexuality? If one twin is homosexual, is the other identical twin always going to be homosexual? The answer to the question is no. So therefore, homosexuality can't be purely genetic. Studies between twins and homosexuality have been done for a really long time. There's been a lot of them done. I'm looking at a couple right here. One is Bailey and Pillard, 1991, Occurrence of Homosexuality Among Brothers. It says 52% of identical twins of homosexual men were likewise homosexual. And then 22% of non-identical twins were likewise homosexual. And here's another one. It says Bailey and Pillard, 1993, Occurrence of Homosexuality Among Sisters. It says 40% of identical twins of homosexual women are likewise homosexual, and 16% of non-identical twins were likewise homosexual. So that's about a 50% chance that if an identical twin is gay, the other identical twin is going to be gay. And a 20% chance if a non-identical twin is gay, the other non-identical twin is gay. So it's more of a chance if you're an identical twin to be gay than if you're not identical to be gay. So that immediately tells you that homosexuality can't be purely genetic because it only happens about 50% of the time with identical twins. So there's an assumed genetic component because there's a higher percentage rate of identical twins to both be gay than non-identical twins to both be gay. Now, going back to nature versus nurture, we've established that there is not a pure genetic influence on homosexuality. But there appears to be an environmental influence and there appears to be a genetic influence. But how do you test to see what is a genetic influence and what's an environmental influence? So the problem with saying that there's a 50% genetic influence is that although they share the same DNA, they also share a lot of other things. Like they have the same prenatal experience. They share the same parents. They're raised in the same household. A lot of times they share the same room until they're in their late teens. They go to the same school. They eat the same food, so on and so forth. So that has to influence it. Are identical twins treated similarly or more similarly than non-identical twins? I would probably have to say they're treated more similarly. For instance, I have a couple cousins who are identical twins and they shared the same toys, they had the same friends, they had the same room, and they were treated very similarly. Whereas non-identical twins are going to have a little bit of a different identity. They have different clothes a lot of the times. They share different friends, and it's just a different upbringing. So I would say they're treated a little bit differently. So it would be impossible to separate out the environmental and the genetic influences on homosexuality. But as we've seen tonight, the environmental influences play a bigger part than the genetic influences on homosexuality. Okay, so I'm going to read something to you. This is from sociologist Stephen Goldberg. It says, I know of no one in the field who argues that homosexuality can be explained without reference to environmental factors. And there is no evidence that homosexuality is simply genetic. And none of the research itself claims there is. One of the problems we have in media is that the person writing a scientific article, they don't really understand the scientific research themselves. So they'll tend to simplify things and or exaggerate things. Gay gene researcher Dean Hammer was asked by Scientific American if homosexuality was rooted solely in biology. He replied, absolutely not. From twin studies, we already know that half or more of the variability is sexual orientation, is not inherited. Our studies try to pinpoint the genetic factors, not negate the sociological factors. But in qualifying their findings, researchers often use language that will surely evade general understanding, making statements that will continue to be avoided by the popular press, such as, the question of the appropriate significance level to apply to a non-Mendelian trait such as sexual orientation is problematic. Sounds too complicated to bother translating? This is actually a very important statement. In layman's terms, this means it is not possible to know what the findings mean. If anything, sexual orientation cannot be possibly inherited in the direct way eye color is. So that's my video. Do you still think homosexuality is genetic? Leave a comment, let me know, and subscribe. I'll be back for more videos.
For more great videos like this one, check out the Psychetruth channel on YouTube.
Woo, 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 woo.